Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're talking about bulb planting in autumn for glorious spring displays. Whether you're a seasoned gardener or just starting out, I'm going to walk you through everything you need to know, from choosing the right bulbs to getting them in the ground properly. So let's go into the greenhouse and check out what bulbs we've got first. So let's start with the basics, because not all bulbs are created equal. And here are some bulb types that are pretty good for spring blooms. So I've got 4 different categories of bulbs that I'm going to talk about. The first one is true bulbs, and so you've got to think tulips and daffodils. This is actually a daffodil. Hyacinths also come under that category, and these have layers like an onion, and they're perfect for adding height and lots of colour. And then you've got corms, and they are like these crocus, and you've got anemones as well, and they store nutrients a bit differently, but they are just as easy to plant. And then you've got rhizomes, and they come under the iris variety, and these need slightly different planting techniques as they grow horizontally near the surface, so they like to be baked in the sunshine. And then you've got tubers like this ranunculus. They're also known as corms as well, actually, and they're a favourite of mine. They look a little bit like dried up claws, but don't let that fool you. They are amazing when they wake up in spring. So this is my little tip. When you're buying bulbs, go for ones that feel firm and heavy for their size, so like an avocado or something like that. Avoid anything squishy like this one. This is a mouldy and soft daffodil, and most garden centres have really good options right now. And also it's quite a good idea to check out if you've got any local growers as well that might have some good bulbs. But once you've got your bulbs, store them somewhere cool and dry. That's if you're not planting them straight away. Somewhere like a garage or a shed works really well. And for corms and ranunculus, you might need to soak them for a few hours before planting to help plump them up. That's what I always do. It works out really well. And I've got some reels over on TikTok and Instagram on how I do that. Now let's talk about soil. Spring bulbs like well-draining soil. So if you've got a heavy clay, you might want to add in some grit or some sand just to help with the drainage. Or maybe even adding a handful of bulb-specific fertiliser if you've got poor soil, or a sprinkle of bone meal. That might just give them that extra boost just to get them started. Also, when you're planting, make sure that the area that you're planting in has got lots of light in. So here's the golden rule. You need to plant your bulb 2 to 3 times as deep as their height. So for example, if your tulip bulb is 5 centimetres tall, you'll need to plant it 10 to 15 centimetres deep. And why you do this is because it helps protect them from the frost, and it kind of deters squirrels as well from digging them up. But if you use a net like I did on my raised beds, then that's probably the better option to deter squirrels. You want to space your bulbs about twice their width apart. So if your daffodil is, say for example, 5 centimetres wide, again just give it 10 centimetres of breathing room. And a random scattering can look lovely in a naturalistic planting, but for borders or pots, then I like to group them up for impact. And here I'm going to do rows of them because I'm going to be using them for cutting, obviously. Thought I'd mention as well the tools that I use either a trowel. I tend to not use bulb planters. I don't know why, I just don't think they're necessary, but you can use bulb planters. I use a trowel, or I use a hori-hori, depending on how solid the ground is and how quickly I want to go. Hori-horis are quite good if the ground is very frozen and you can just stab it quickly and pull it back and plop the bulb in. However, today I'm just preferring using my Jameson Brothers trowel. I don't know, it's just what I'm preferring today. I'm using my trowel today because I haven't got that many to do. I think there's probably about 25 in this bag, and I've got about 2 or 3 bags. But when I'm planting on a large scale, so when I do my tulips for example, then I'll either plant them all into rows and then use the hori to dig them in. If I'm planting them in the ground, then I'll quite often use the trench method, where I'll get a big spade and I'll dig a big trench, and then I'll place them all in and then cover them all over the top. Because I haven't got many here, I'm just planting them in individually. Pots are perfect if you're short on garden space, or just funky containers, whatever you can get your hands on. And they're really good if you just want a portable burst of spring colour. You can try layering bulbs for like a bulb lasagna, and I'll show you how I do it now. So to start with, I've put some grit in at the bottom, and then I've put a small layer of RHS Silvergrow compost, and then I'm going to put in some daffodils first of all. I'm going to put in my dwarf varieties that I've got. So I'm going to put in the largest bulbs first, and I'm just going to pop them in on a first layer. So that's my first layer of tulips, and I'm going to add a layer of compost, and then I'm going to put my daffodils in next. So these ones are dwarf tete-a-tete daffodils. As you can see, they're slightly smaller. So you always start off with the big bulbs at the bottom first, and you just go a little bit smaller, and I'm just going to again just try and pack them in as much as I can. You can sort of feel the bulbs, the tulips underneath. So I'm going to just try and roughly plant, not directly on top of them, like that. I'll probably do with one more at the back if I can. That'll be perfect. And so I'm going to put another layer of compost on here. So these crocuses are the large flowering mix. They look so pretty. So we're going to get those in, and again, just very slightly smaller. They are starting to shoot a little bit. So again, I'm just going to space these in as smaller. So I'm going to put, that one's not a good one. It's a little bit moldy, that one. So pop that one away. And I'm just going to pack those all in on top. I'm going to try and use up this pack if I can, because there's not that many in a pack. So that's the crocuses in the right way around. And I've just about got enough room to cover that with some extra compost. So I've obviously put the crocuses on top, but if you've got something like the anemones or maybe the ranunculus, that would work as well, possibly on top because they're quite small. So I'm not going to water it because we're due for a storm this weekend, and I know we're going to get plenty of rain, and this is going to be, I'm going to keep this outside on the patio table in front of the greenhouse. I know it's going to get a good water, but I'm just going to keep an eye on it that it doesn't get too much water, because bulbs don't like to get too wet, otherwise they'll rot. And then by mid to late spring, depending on the bulbs that you've planted, you'll see the first green shoots popping up, which is really exciting. And if you've planted a mix of early, mid and late bloomers, then you'll be able to enjoy colour for weeks on end. Snoop, stop growling. And remember, once they've flowered, let the foliage die. Let the foliage die back naturally, because that's feeding the bulb for next year's flowers. So just be patient with the greenery. You can tidy it up later, but remember, the more greenery that's left on, the better blooms that you'll get for next year.